The first time she rode into Miller's Crossing. The wind carried more dust than hope. And every man on the boardwalk stopped pretending not to stare. She wasn't dressed like trouble. But trouble seemed to follow. The thin leather satchel slung across her shoulder and the stubborn set of her chin. When she reached the hitching post outside Caleb Turner's ranch supply store, she dismounted slowly, as if measuring her strength. Caleb had seen drifters before, men running from debts. Boys chasing legends, women with stories they wouldn't tell, but something about her eyes made him step out from behind the counter before she even spoke. "I'm looking for work," she said. Voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I can cook, mend, clean stalls. Whatever you need." Caleb studied her sunburned cheeks and worn boots. She wasn't begging. She was bargaining with dignity. "Name?" he asked. "Anna." "No last name. Just Anna." He should have sent her toward town. Told her to try the boarding house or the mercantile. A lone cowboy hiring a lone woman was a recipe for gossip. And Miller's Crossing thrived on gossip the way cattle thrived on grass. But Caleb had always been a man who listened to instinct. And his instinct whispered that turning her away would haunt him longer than any rumor. "I've got a small bunkhouse," he said finally. "Pays not much. Work starts before sunrise." She nodded once. Relief flashing in her eyes like lightning behind storm clouds. "I don't scare easy," she replied. If only he had known then how true that was. For the next 2 weeks, Anna worked harder than any ranch hand he'd hired. She hauled water without complaint, patched fences with hands that blistered and bled, and hummed soft, broken melodies while stirring beans over the fire. Caleb noticed the way she startled at distant hoofbeats and how she scanned the horizon each evening as if expecting someone, or something, to appear. He didn't press. Out here, privacy was a currency more valuable than gold. One night, as the sky burned orange and purple, she asked him quietly, "You ever wish you could start over? Like the past never happened?" Caleb leaned against the corral, hat tipped low. "Every man out here's trying to start over," he said. "That's why we came west." She almost smiled at that, but sadness pulled it back. The next morning, before dawn had fully broken, Caleb woke to the frantic barking of his old sheepdog, Rusty. He grabbed his rifle and stepped onto the porch, expecting coyotes or a stray steer. Instead, he froze. On the wooden planks, wrapped in a faded quilt, lay a small bundle shifting weakly against the cold. Rusty circled protectively, whining. Caleb knelt and pulled back the quilt. A baby. A tiny, red-faced baby with wide gray eyes blinking against the pale light. Tucked beside the child was a folded piece of paper. Caleb's hands shook as he opened it. The handwriting was unmistakably Anna's. "I'm sorry," it read. "They're closer than I thought. If I stay, you'll pay for my mistakes. Please keep him safe. His name is Thomas. Tell him I fought." The words burned into Caleb's mind as the weight of the child settled into his arms. Behind him, the bunkhouse door creaked open. Anna stood there, pale, breath ragged, a small pack slung over her shoulder. "You weren't supposed to wake yet," she whispered. "Who's after you?" Caleb demanded, anger and fear tangling in his chest. She looked at the horizon where a thin trail of dust rose in the distance. "Men who don't forgive debts," she said softly. "Men who think people are property." Caleb understood then. She hadn't just been looking for work. She'd been hiding. "You're not leaving," he said firmly. "You think I'm going to let you ride out alone?" Her eyes shone with fierce gratitude. "They won't stop," she warned. "They'll burn this place to the ground." Caleb shifted the baby in his arms, feeling the tiny heartbeat against his palm. Something inside him, something long buried under years of solitude, flared to life. "Then let them come," he said. As the dust cloud on the horizon thickened, Anna stepped forward, placing a trembling hand on the child's cheek. "If I don't make it back," she began. You will, Caleb cut in. And we'll face whatever's coming together. In that moment, the quiet ranch that had known only loneliness and routine transformed into a battleground for redemption. Caleb Turner had spent years believing he'd left heroics behind with his past mistakes. But standing on that porch with a baby in his arms and a desperate woman at his side, he realized some fights don't find you because you're ready, they find you because you're needed. And sometimes, the smallest bundle left at your door can change the course of your life forever. If this story has already gripped your heart, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because what happens next will test courage, loyalty, and love in ways you won't see coming. The riders arrived just after noon. 5 shadows cutting across the golden field like a storm front swallowing sunlight. Caleb had moved Anna and the baby into the storm cellar beneath the barn, pressing his revolver into her shaking hands despite her protests. I won't hide while you fight, she insisted. You're not hiding, he replied. You're protecting your son. The word son seemed to steady her more than any promise could. Caleb stepped back into the yard as the men dismounted. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a scar slicing across his jaw, surveyed the ranch with cold amusement. Afternoon, he called. We're looking for something that belongs to us. Caleb rested his hand near his holster but didn't draw. Nothing here belongs to anyone but me. The scarred man smirked. Girl named Anna. And what she took. Caleb felt anger rise like wildfire. She's not property, he said evenly. Laughter rippled through the group. Out here, the leader replied. Everything's property. The first shot shattered the water trough, splintering wood and spraying muddy droplets across Caleb's boots. He dove behind a wagon as bullets tore through siding. The ranch echoed with chaos, horses screaming, wood cracking, gunfire splitting the sky. Caleb returned fire with controlled precision. Years of hard lessons guiding his aim. One rider fell. Another cursed and scrambled for cover. Smoke curled from the barn roof as a lantern exploded against the hayloft. You're making this harder than it needs to be, the leader shouted. Caleb's jaw tightened. He thought of the baby's fragile fingers curling around his thumb that morning. He thought of Anna's haunted eyes slowly regaining light over the past weeks. Good, he muttered, firing again. In the cellar, Anna could hear every shot. Fear clawed at her chest, but beneath it burned something stronger, resolve. She had run long enough. Carefully, she climbed the narrow steps, revolver steady despite her trembling. She slipped around the back of the barn just as one of the men circled toward the cellar doors. Looking for me? She called, voice sharp as steel. The men spun, startled, giving Caleb the split second he needed to disarm him with a well-placed shot. The leader's smirk vanished as he realized the tide had shifted. Flames licked at the barn walls, but so did defiance. This isn't over, he snarled, mounting his horse. It is here, Caleb answered, aiming squarely. One final shot sent the leader's head flying and his horse rearing in panic. The remaining men fled, dragging their wounded pride into the distance. Silence fell heavy over the ranch, broken only by the crackle of dying fire and the soft cry of a baby from below ground. Caleb rushed to stamp out the flames while Anna ran to the cellar, lifting Thomas into her arms. When she emerged, soot streaked her face and tears glistened in her eyes, not of fear, but of fierce gratitude. You didn't have to do this, she said hoarsely. Caleb looked around at the scorched boards, the shattered trough, the bullet holes marking his home. Then he looked at her and the child. Yeah, he said quietly. I did. The weeks that followed were filled with rebuilding. Neighbors who had once whispered now showed up with lumber and nails. Having heard how Caleb stood against men who treated lives like merchandise, Anna no longer scanned the horizon with dread. She watched it with cautious hope. One evening, as Thomas slept in a cradle Caleb built with his own hands, Anna stood beside him on the porch where it had all begun. Why, she asked softly. Why risk everything for someone you barely knew? Caleb considered the question, head resting against his chest. Because everyone deserves one place in this world where they're not afraid, he said. I figured maybe this could be yours. The sun dipped below the hills, painting the sky in colors that promised new beginnings. Anna slipped her hand into his, no longer asking for work but offering partnership. And Caleb realized that what he found on his porch that morning hadn't just been a baby, it had been a second chance. A chance to build not just fences and barns, but a family. Out on the frontier, where survival often hardened hearts, love had taken root in the most unexpected soil. And it grew stronger with every sunrise. If this story moved you, if you believe in second chances and courage in the face of fear, subscribe to the channel and join us for more powerful frontier tales that remind us how even the smallest moments can change a life forever.